The purpose of this bill, we're told from the memorandum, is to give further effect to the directive of the EU 2019/1158 of the European Parliament and of the Council of 20 June 2019 on work-life balance for parents and carers, and repealing Council Directive 2010/18 EU, and for that purpose to amend the Parental Leave Act 1998 to entitle certain employees to leave for medical case purposes and to request flexible working arrangements for caring purposes. And that all sounds very nice and dandy and, reasonable. And we must, in the first instance, I want to say, and I always do say, as experienced as an employer myself, both in part of my family business, but also we have staff working for us in this position in the Oireachtas. We try and look after our staff, and my staff are mainly female and excellent staff. I want to pay tribute to them. They always do the work. Yes, indeed. Let's go. Another Kurik, yes, I accept that totally. Be nowhere without him. In my life, I have 5 daughters and 1 wife, God bless her, and we have 3 sons, and now we have 6 beautiful granddaughters and 3 wonderful little Bukliogi grandsons. So a good mixture and a good blend, and I get plenty sound advice. And along the way, and I'm very grateful for that, and thanks be to God for their help and for their support. And number 2, amend the Maternity Protection Act 1994 to extend the entitlement to breastfeeding breaks for 2 years after the birth of a child. It also seeks to ensure that transgender male who has, in accordance with Gender Recognition Act 2015, obtained the gender recognition certificate and subsequently becomes pregnant, to fall within the scope of the Maternity Protection Act 1994. And number 3, in the memorandum, is to amend the Adoptive Leave Act 1995 to correct anomalies arising from amendments made under the Family Leaves and Miscellaneous Provisions Act 2021. And Iver Cahir make necessary consequential amendments to the Redundancy Payments Act 1967, the Unfair Dismissals Act 1977, the Organisation of Working Time Act 1997, and the Workplace Relations Act 2015. And if I could just say, as an employer, and I've listened to employers, these pieces of legislation are very wide-ranging and quite, I suppose, technical and quite very well-intentioned, but they can be problematic for employers, for ordinary small SMEs especially. It's fine for the public service because there's lots of staff, and I'm not knocking the public service, but there's staff there and the people behind the roles to understand and to bed in this legislation and to get training on it and everything else. But in a small business or self-employed, a couple of people, the time or the energy isn't there. They put every bit of time and energy into trying to motivate their business, trying to get business, deliver the business, if it's a service, and do the business and receive the remuneration and have their work-time balance there as well. So it's important in all legislation. And we haven't in recent years, I feel, take account of the impact of the legislation. And there's not enough of, obviously, pre-legislative scrutiny. In many areas, we're always having issues about that. But there certainly is no real impact analysis. Maybe it should be enshrined in all legislation, that we will revisit it after 6 months, 12 months, maybe 2 years, to see how is this bedding in, what are the impacts this have, what are the unforeseen consequences, which may be many, and where the shortcomings. And I was interested to hear yesterday, after a briefing in the AV room, of the mental health situation, and a document published there, very good document, and very well attended. And to hear the Cathaoirleach from the Senate tell that crowded AV room that they have a piece of legislation in the Senate and they're going back to review. It's coming up for review. I think it's after 8 months, and that's the first time I've seen that, and I think it's very important. Very, very, very important, especially in mental health. But in any legislation, I believe we should have an impact. Because if I make a decision at work or business, it always has some impact, either on customers or maybe on some of the employees. And you must always be ready to reassess that and to see, can you ameliorate the difficulty and try and have the best, I suppose, vision of it going forward. And above all, that the staff are exhausted, that the dean is exhausted, a person that's happy in work and happy with what they have to do will achieve much more in their day's work, and so will the company. Aid provides the right to, as I said, request flexible working arrangements for caring purposes for parents and carers. And that's hugely important because, you know, flexible, and most employers, as I said, are flexible insofar as they can. In some instances, it's not just possible. So, for caring purposes, it's because I wear the carers badge, EGONI, and they're a wonderful organisation. And apart from they can take the organisation away, they're only trying to manage and advocate. But the carers, up and down the length and breadth of this country, and the number, and I happen to exact figures, but it's quite a large and shocking number. In a recent survey a year and a half ago, the number of child carers, children who should be taken more for spare, things that children do. They should be out playing and taking part in sport or whatever. A green card, no, aim swimming, you take it. They're leisure activity, but to think that they have to be in a situation of caring for maybe their parents, a parent, and maybe for a sibling, and certainly something needs to be, a mattress needs to be done there. And then we see the carers, and they're very disappointed in the budget while they got their once-off payment. They're not automatically linked to fuel allowance and issues like that, because caring is very demanding, time-consuming, and indeed it drains people. And they do get the respite grant if they're approved carers for once a year to get a break, because they seldom get breaks because it's 24/7. And some people can be very challenging with very, very serious illnesses. So that's an area employers should try and work with, but the government must do more to support the carers. It provides the right to leave for medical care purposes, both for employees with children up to the age of 12 and carers. And C, it provides an extension of the current entitlement to breastfeeding, lactation breaks for 6 months or 2 years. And can I just say, every day, I'm sure it's the same in most deputies' offices. Like, as I said, the grandchildren, they get the colds as well and flus, and one of them is, little Laura, was sick during the night, she's tying, and the parent is, Granny's stepping in this morning, doing a great job today until 3 p.m, and her mother's going to work from home for the rest of the day, as well as mind the child. So it's tough. It's not an easy area rearing children of any age. And I don't think you them rear when they come to 9 or 10 or up to 12 as this. Often the difficulties only start then at that age, because I have them from almost 40 down to 20, ranging in age. So I have a lived experience there. I'm not writing a history of my own family. I'm just saying that's for every family. It's the same, and it's much more difficult for single-parent families or for families that don't have the extended family of uncles or aunts, or indeed Shanmore or Shanata. It's challenging, and it must be awfully challenging when people are abroad in a different country and try to bring up children, because in a community that's different ideals and values and different, different ways of life than we have in Ireland. So I think it's very important that we would be aware of all that. In addition to these measures, it is expected that legislation will be from left scale. Well, look, the legislation, many aspects are welcome, some aspects are don't welcome. And as I said, expected legislation will be introduced at committee stage to provide for a form of paid domestic violence leave. Hugely important, because domestic violence, is an appalling situation, and must be supported. Victims And perpetrators must be brought to justice first of all, but they need treatment as well. If there's domestic violence, obviously there's something seriously amiss and wrong, and it's a heinous crime, and it must be we must try and have a kind of a restorative justice, and people will learn the mistake of their ways and just won't be locked away, but they must go back out in society hopefully and try and be retrained and re-advised as a culture and what people are expected, and there's no place in society for domestic violence. So from that point of view, it's very concerning recently. I'm very concerned in recent weeks to find out, especially that we're so short of numbers on Garda Síochána, and the guards can't do everything. I've said that the guards can't police in any country without the support of the people. But when we see the problem, I never saw it. Obviously, we know when the crash Templemore was closed in my own county, but it reopened in a blaze of glory, and I attended one or two, I think, of the passing out praise. Knew some great people that passed out, graduated with distinction, and they went to different parts of the country. But there was huge take-up. But in recent years, we can't fill the places. At present, there's only 24 training at Templemore, and the guards announced the government announced 1,000 new places last year. Wasn't fulfilled. 800, sorry, wasn't fulfilled, and now they have announced 800 for this year. Sure, they can't get. There's something seriously wrong if we can't attract our young people and the older people now, because the age limit which was a good move, was up some years ago, to get people that had life experience in there as well. So we have a huge problem, because Gardaí are the first line if there's domestic violence. And we saw the issues in quite recently as well, where 999 calls were cancelled. That shouldn't be happening. If someone doesn't press a 999 call, okay, there's some people out there that do this frivolously and they're not well and they waste time, but that's only a small minority. But there's huge numbers and no proper explanation as to what happened to them. And that's very worrying. So what is worrying going forward if we can't fill the places in the Gardaí? So we look at their terms and conditions of their employment, their pension rights, and it's become a very dangerous and challenging job. So there's issues there for another day, but it deals with this. If we can keep passing this legislation and expect, as I said, the Garda Síochána to enforce it where necessary, and other agencies, if they haven't the manpower. I mean, that's how we have so much issues in this, so many issues in this country with lack of regulation. Because the regulators are toothless, and then there are not enough of them there, and they're just literally brushed by and stood on, literally by big business, like corporate Ireland. And very hard to train them. It's easy for people to arrive in my business with the briefcases and sit down and talk to a small employer. But when you have corporate business employing thousands and multi-billion-pound businesses, they don't care. We have a company in this country we're fined $101 million operating in Ireland. It's active in Ireland, but all over the world, a multi-billion company by a state of, I don't know, is it New Jersey or some state? And rightly so. But here, we haven't the wherewithal or the tools of the trade to try and deal with those. So any legislation we passed, and I've noticed that in recent times, the last 8 years certainly, we're passing a lot of legislation here. And a lot of it I've opposed, and I will oppose it. It's my duty to act for the people who I represent as well. And a lot of it is, you know, it's a huge push, huge glamour around it, as some of this legislation is. And as I said, the whole area to delete the word woman out of the legislation. That's what my understanding. It was a big furore during the summer, fanned by media then and by some of the organisations out there that champion this cause. And we have so many NGOs now, costing $5.5 billion a year. Some of that money was redirected. Well, they're good NGOs, don't get me wrong, but I question the amount of them. 36,000 of them I found out through PQ from my colleague, Deputy Carl Nolan. And you're saying that it's not in it. And a woman then to be tried as a person with a cervix. The whole area of that, to me, not right people, but ordinary people have come to me, they've emailed me, they've contacted me. They're aghast at the way we're going here. They're aghast at some of the legislation that we're passing through, and they're fundamentally opposed to it. And they are proud to be women and known as women and lived a normal life, and they feel that we're going way over the threshold here in an almighty rush to change the whole image of our country, totally, turn it inside out. But I go back to the family unit. The family unit, and there's different kinds of family units now, but the family unit is so important for the nurturing of the children and for the help and support right from the cradle to the grave. So I wish is there, and hopefully we'll be getting, if we're putting in some amendments if we can, we get seek more clarification. And like Deputy Tobin, there's a silent cohort of people out there, busy in their lives, running their families, doing their best, and contributing hugely. And they feel a lot of this legislation is not even relevant to them. And they're kind of wondering, where's it going? Who's driving it? Where's it coming from? So I say make hay slowly here. Go stall the horses for the moment and go back and reevaluate. And don't have a select few NGOs or organisations dictating what legislation is coming in here. And worse than that then, if anybody dares put up their head, as they did in a programme in RT or elsewhere, they're shot down. Where's the freedom of speech that we fought so much to value of our freedom and our rights and fundamental rights? If you're afraid to go out and speak, like we've that idea at the moment, we've that problem at the moment I've been raising here for the last 3 weeks, with lack of numbers in Gardaí and problems with people being intimidated in their homes in my own county, Tipperdown and Hass I'm talking about, and Clonmel and surrounding parishes. And people are afraid to speak the name of the perpetrators. Afraid. I mean, that's not a democracy. That's not cherishing our people equally. Everybody's innocent and proven guilty. And the whole situation, then we won't look at it at all, of the revolving door circus with free legal aid 50, 60, 100, 120 times. I'm saying everybody's entitled to legal aid.
Just the relevance.
Yeah, but it's all relevant because we're passing this legislation here, and a lot of people are have fundamental issues with it. And then they see the other side, legislation has passed, not being enforced, and inability. And worse than, and I'm no disrespect to your good self, you're a pretty eminent barrister, I'm told, to make your own life, other life before here. Like the free legal aid and the whole circus is down there, and people coming out. And the tagging, I raised it again, the tagging was passed by this house, and seems to have got lost off. I'm not saying I'm cruel to tag everybody. Serial convicted persons that will have offended again, they should be tagged. It was passed by this house, but it seems to have fallen between the cracks. The Gardaí aren't using it. In the prison office, I understand it's a private company that's doing it. It's not working. So look at the legislation we have and the failures that are in it. Make hay slowly as regards this new territory that we want to traverse and the speed that we want to do it. So I certainly, for one, will be monitoring with some of my colleagues in the rural independent group and others. And I say everybody should be entitled to have their voice heard respectfully and dignity, and people as well. And when they see things changing, and I'll finish Les Concora, the score, the whole interference, and I heard some deputy refer to earlier too about teachers, and they're being told now what to teach in school and what not in the curriculum. That needs to be seriously examined. And the pressure on people who have decided and are deciding to homeschool their children. Good people. They'll be put under pressure. Some before the courts, because they won't allow all kinds of access to their homes. Their family home is sacrosanct, unless there's something weird going on there. This has gone way too far, and I say it must stop. People are entitled to homeschool their children, and they don't agree with the practices that are changing in the schools at an enormous rate as well. And they're very concerned. So I'm being hauled before the courts.
Deputy, I'm reluctant to keep interrupting you, but it's a work-life balance.
Yes, but it's all relative. I'm talking about the bill. I'm finished any less Concora. I'm talking about the legislation and the impact it has going forward. Thank you.